Hey, what is up? Welcome to this episode of the Entrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast. As always, I'm your host, Brian Lofermento, and I'll tell you what, so many people want to talk about AI, so many people want to get into e-commerce, but all of us want to figure out ways to convert more customers and clients. And that's why today's guest is an expert in all three of those. I'm so excited to learn from him. His name is Angelo Ferro. Angelo is the co-founder of ShopLandingAI, which is a Y-Combinator and venture-backed startup that leverages generative AI and machine learning to create personalized shopping experiences that increase conversions. Sounds like some really cool tech stuff that we're going to dig into today. Prior to founding ShopLandingAI, Angelo was running the data analytics team at Unity Technologies, where they built tools for game developers to help them understand the behavior of over 1.5 billion with a B monthly active gamers. So Angelo's approach to business is not only rooted in technology, but analytics and also a personalized experience. We're all going to learn a lot from Angelo here today. Whether you're in e-commerce or not, when we talk conversions, it's something that all of us are responsible for in our own businesses. So I'm not going to say anything else. Let's dive straight into my interview with Angelo Ferro. All right, Angelo, I'm so excited that you're here with us today. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Heck yes. So you have got such a cool background in all things tech. I think the video game industry is such a cool place to come from, but take us beyond the bio. Who's Angelo? How'd you start doing all these cool things?
Yes, my name is Angelo. I'm based in New York. And how did I get started doing these things? So I did my undergrad at Berkeley, where I majored in business and economics. And this was in 2008. And I was deciding whether to go into banking or consulting. And I found that working with economic consultants was a lot nicer than working with bankers. And so my first job out of college was economic litigation consulting, which sounds just as interesting and sexy as it sounds. But in that job was my first time I was, introduced to data. And so I did that for 5 years. And in that job, I was, we're just like surrounded by data. So I became really familiar with understanding data, how to clean data, and how to analyze data so you can get meaning out of it. And then after that, I joined a small startup called Playnomics, which was a gaming analytics startup that was focused on how to leverage data to help game developers basically personalize the game experience. And so that company was acquired by a bigger company called Unity, which is a game engine. And we brought over that technology. And our thesis has always been, how can we help people unlock the potential of the data that they have in order to personalize and customize the experience for their customers, so that they can either, whether it's a game, play the game more, spend more, or whether it's an e-commerce website, interact with your content, stay on your page longer, and ultimately convert. So I guess it's a long-winded way of saying that I've always been surrounded by data. I think I've been lucky to work at companies that have had data resources, data analysts, and data engineers to learn from them. And now with the customers that we serve in e-commerce, most of them don't have developers and don't have dedicated data resources. And so we kind of view it as ourselves to help them unlock the power of the data so that they can use it to drive more sales.
Yeah, Angelo, I love that overview because you so consistently tie data to a purpose, which is personalization. And at its most basic level, when we have this conversation here today in front of thousands of entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs around the world, we all understand the personalized aspect of it, because the ads that I see when I scroll through Instagram are very different from the ads that you see. But walk us through that, because that seems at a really enterprise level. Of course, that world is possible, and Target sends me different discounts than what they send to you. How does this apply at the smaller business scale? How are these resources accessible to us?
Yeah, so the example you brought up where, Facebook and Instagram are sending you targeted ads. So you're seeing different ads than what I'm seeing. Chances are, if you're at SMB, you're acquiring customers by advertising on one of these channels, Facebook or Google or Instagram. And so what we found is that a lot of these entrepreneurs, they kind of rely on these paid channels to find these right customers for your product. But then that experience is kind of broken in that it's, Facebook has find the right customers, but then you're sending them to a homepage that's not personalized, right? One of my colleagues who has a deep experience in UI and UX, she always says that the homepage is kind of meant to be like the catch-all for everybody, but your ads are targeting different individuals. Like you might be targeting someone in their 24 to 35 age range, but that same product could also be sold to someone older. They're seeing different ads, but then when they land on the homepage that's not speaking to that specific audience, that persona, that's a common example where we see where you're spending all this money to acquire the customer, but then they get to your homepage and it's not personalized to them.
Yeah, that's fascinating because a lot of people probably view their website through a very limited lens, which is my website is my website. We're talking about a different landing page experience and website experience per user. Walk us down that path.
Yeah. So what we do is the way we're able to do that is we tie it to the campaign. So most campaigns are targeting a specific audience, a specific persona. But let me back up. Should I explain what persona is? I'm guessing that's
I'd love for you to.
Nomenclature. Yeah. So you can think of personas as unique audiences that are purchasing your good or your service. And so a lot of times what we find with entrepreneurs, we work with a lot of direct-to-consumer brands, and they built a product because they had a problem. Chances are they built that product for them, and they've had a good degree of success, and they sold the product, but they reach a point where kind of like it just gets hard to scale. And the reason why it gets hard to scale is because they don't know who to target beyond their original, ICP. So that's where we come in. We take a look at the data that they're already collecting from the Shopify. We match that with our kind of like database to model out like who we think these different personas are. And so through that, we basically use your data that you're already collecting to figure out who are the distinct audiences, people who are purchasing that product. Because when we're able to identify who those distinct audiences are, the next step that we do is we do user interviews. So we pull from a network of people who might be that target audience, and then we interview them. We figure out what their pain points are, how they bespoke, how do they need to be marketed to, so that you can market to them effectively.
Angelo, I want to use some real life examples because for sake of simplicity, let's rock with two different segments of the market. Let's just, for sake of simplicity, say men and women. I want to personalize.
I have a perfect example for you. So one of the brands that we work with, they sell a very expensive concrete mixer. And so the product costs about $3,000. They are on track to do really well this year. Last year was the first year that they started spending. So mostly acquiring users through Facebook. And they had done only advertising. They were only advertising specifically to men. And then when we looked at their data, even though that they were only advertising to men, we found that about 10% of their audience was women. So 10% of their buyers actually was women. So women had been purchasing this product, even though they never saw an ad, they weren't being directly marketed to. And so with that insight, we were able to, through our technology, figure out, okay, women, this looks like an audience that you might want to tap into. The next step that we did is we did user interviews. We contacted women who were small contractors and DIYers to really build out and flesh out who this persona is. So we did these interviews, and how we leverage AI is we use AI for the analysis, and we also train our own models to help us kind of digest all this information. So the one thing that AI has been super helpful for us, and I suggest like all the SMBs out there or entrepreneurs think about, is how you can use AI to make the processes that take a long time like 10x faster. So for us, we do these user interviews. We're able to interview 5 to 10 people. We use an AI to record the transcript, and then we feed the transcripts into this AI that we built to kind of pull out these insights and pull out the core messaging. So the key things that came out of that research process was we found that the mud mixer is a pretty big machine. It's a funny story. So I was doing a test transaction for this customer, and I live in New York, and we don't have a lot of space. And then my doorman called me. He's like, "Oh, you have like a concrete mixer here, and it's like 300 pounds. So I'm glad my doorman called me before the UPS guy got here so that they could take it back to the customer. But one thing that came out is it's a big machine. And so women wanted to see more creatives and more visuals that showed women next to the machine so they had a sense of scale. All the women that we interviewed, they had no doubt that they could use this and that it would benefit them in their small projects or in their professional projects. But having the right visual cues to know that, okay, this is something that they could use. Another thing that came out from that is making sure that the landing page or like the website had more pictures of women using the machine and also content from women DIY influencers. So it's kind of figuring out, okay, for this target audience, in case women, they need to be marketed to in a specific way. They need to be, here's the visual cues that they need. Here's the language that they need in order to feel comfortable purchasing this product. This product is $3,000. It's a pretty expensive. It's not an impulse buy, right? So having all that information, having all that context, having all that visual information was really helpful in kind of pushing them towards making a purchasing decision.
Yeah, Angela, it's funny. A lot of people tuning in here today thinking that they're going to learn from an AI founder. Of course, that's what we're doing. But I think what really stands out to me is that you're talking about the good old analog stuff. You're talking about customer interviews and the feedback there. Because of course, AI is only as good as the inputs that we give it. And so a lot of people who think AI is just going to give me all the answers, talk about those inputs, because obviously that's a side of the equation that's incredibly important.
Yeah. So the AI is just not there yet. Where we work with a lot of, again, direct-to-consumer brands, and obviously they're very protective of their branding, as they should, because they worked really hard to come up with that branding and the marketing. And the AI is just not there yet, where you could kind of, hey, make this website for women for the specific brand. Like we need to. So what we do is we have our own proprietary set of templates that we know work well based off of testing that we've done, and also across the kind of like network of customers that we work with. So we knew that this layout will do really well. And as far as the inputs, really the user interviews, that's one thing. So we do two things: qualitative research and quantitative research. So the quantitative research is what I mentioned earlier, where we take your existing user data, we apply our algorithms and to figure out, okay, who are the interesting segments that are purchasing your product that are unique enough that you could market to them differently. And then the next step is we do the user interviews, talking to your customers, because that's the best way of understanding and validating the quantitative data that we had basically pulled, that our AI pulled. So it's a combination of the qualitative to validate the quantitative, and then it's that combination that we're able to produce the results that our clients really are happy about.
Yeah, I love that. And we're going to talk about your website at the end of today's episode. You guys have so many cool case studies on there. Listeners, you're going to be able to check out all the cool stuff that they're doing over at ShopLandingAI. But Angela, I do want to talk to you about this term. It's so prevalent everywhere that I look and read about the work that you all do. It's personalized customer journeys. We're not just talking about A/B testing two versions of our homepages. You're talking about personalized customer journeys. What does that verbiage mean?
Yeah, so basically, so we have that landing page, which is, for women, here's this landing page. The next evolution of that is basically how can we make the website experience a little bit more interactive? So to bring it back to gaming, the analogy there is like with gaming, are you a mobile gamer?
I'm
play
not.
Candy Crush? You're not? Okay. Well, your mom probably does. My mom plays Candy Crush. And so what we did for the developers that we're working with back at Unity was depending on how you interacted with the game, we're able to pick up certain signals, right? So if we know your history from another game, like if you're a veteran of Candy Crush, if you crush candy all the time, that was a bad joke. But instead of starting you on the tutorial, we would fast forward you right away and get you a level 10, give you some in-game currency so that you could basically skip that first part, because we already know that you're an expert. We know that you know how to play this game. So here, let's make it a little bit harder for you. Let's make it a little bit more interesting for you to increase your engagement and to get you to convert. The analogy that we're doing is we started rolling out, and that we'll do a formal product launch the next week or two, which is very exciting, is basically putting a game on the website. So you go on the website, you fill out this quiz, and depending on how you answer the quiz, we will curate what the product selection is. So, if you're trying to think of a good example, we're working right now with a shoe company, and they offer, we're working with a triathlon company, and they offer different gear depending on it's a triathlon company. Let me think of a better example. Sorry, this is my first time.
I do this to myself all the time on the air, Angelo. All the time. I start using examples like dog food or yoga.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't know anything about these things, so why am I going down this path? But I love the fact that you've got so many real life examples.
So here's an example. So we're working with a wine company. They're based in Australia. And so as part of the quiz, you answer what type of wine do you like? What's the occasion? What are you buying for? And then depending on how you answer that, you get a curated landing page that gives you the specific type of wine. There's recommendations for what pairs well with the wine, as well as a little bit more of history with the brand. So that's a better example of how we're trying to match the the goal is to get you to engage with the website. Like a lot of times, the traffic that goes to your website, it bounces. Most websites have like a 70-80% bounce rate. And so what we're trying to do is, what can we do to keep you on that page? Here's a quick quiz, answer it, and then you get a personalized recommendation that will lead you to either a landing page or like a product page or a curated collection. that is basically speaking to you.
Yeah.
I have a better personalization example. What we're trying to do is, if you think about it, like the real world analogy is like, let's say you're going to a Nordstrom's and you're trying to look for, I don't know, a suit or a jacket or something for a special occasion. You would talk to the sales rep. That sales rep would be like, okay, where are you going? I'm going on a wedding. It's in Lake Como. It's going to be in June, so it's going to be hot. And then they would be able to kind of, and the dress code is like black tie. So they would be able to guide you to like, okay, here's a selection of items in your price point that would be good for the specific occasion. We're trying to take that kind of like concierge Nordstrom personal shopper experience, but incorporating aspects of that into this game or this quiz on the website where you can basically reveal more about yourself, and then we'll reward you by revealing more about yourself with more engaging content and the right product for you.
Yeah, I love that overview, especially because I think we're starting to see bigger brands in real life doing this. I went into the New Balance store recently, and they have this whole, it's a really cool tech setup where you stand on some device and it maps out your foot, and then you say, I walk this many miles a week, I like these other activities, and it'll map that recommendation to a shoe in addition to the sales associate that you're assigned to. But the fact that you're doing this at scale on an e-commerce level for every single business, regardless of size, is incredible. I want to ask you about the actual makeup of the websites, because obviously first impressions matter. It says it right there on your website. I think that's such a powerful headline. What are the elements that usher people towards that conversion, because they don't have, like your Nordstrom example, a sales rep standing right next to them?
Yeah, so I would say the things that we've learned, and we've looked at a lot of landing pages, and we looked at a lot of home pages. Like the stat that's accepted is like I mentioned, that bounce rate. So 70-80%. Most of the traffic, especially if they're cold and they're just coming from an ad, most of them will bounce, and most of them will never go like what we call below the fold, which is, if you think about it, if you're on your desktop or your phone, that's like the real estate right where your screen hits. And so most people don't go below that. And so the things that we found, like, well, our quiz is one of the things that help increase engagement, and we've seen that through the data. But if you don't have a quiz, one of the easy things you can do is just bring up some social proof. So bring up, like, if you were on Shark Tank, or if you have 1,000 reviews, or if you have influencer content that raves about your product. Because a lot of the cold traffic, and the reason why I bring this up is because a lot of brands are working on building up their brand equity, and they're working on building up their brand, but they are still acquiring. Most of the time people find out about them through Facebook or through Instagram, because Instagram's really good at finding you. But once they're on the website, your goal is kind of keep them engaged. So if having an engaging hero, having social proof, having any stats. So like if, we like to use superlatives. So let's say you're selling, I don't know, wine, and you've sold over, 10,000 bottles of wine, or you've had 4.9 stars over thousands of reviews. Having that social proof, we found, has been super helpful in bringing that up so that people see it. And then if you're lucky enough to get them to continue to scroll down, thinking about what their common objections are. So like bringing things like, oh, this wine is too expensive, or like, talking to your customers and figuring out what are the pain points or what are the reservations they might have about purchasing your product, and then addressing those within the first few instances of their experiencing your website is a great way to get them engaged, but also get them to convert. Because what we found is you're able to get, the first thing we talk about with our clients is like, the goal is engagement. Get people to stay on the website, get people to learn more about your brand, get them to be interested in the product, and then conversions comes after that.
Yeah, Angelo, the thing that I really appreciate about the way that you talk about this stuff is every single thing you talk about improving, you tie it to a metric, whether that is decreasing the bounce rate, increasing the conversion rate. Talk to me about some of those metrics, because you've worked in all different sides of data. What sort of metrics are directly relevant to e-commerce as opposed to just the conversion rate? What are some of those leading indicators? Yeah.
So for sure, if you're in e-commerce, most of the brands are working on Shopify. So you want to look at your Shopify dashboard or your Google Analytics dashboard. So you're just sitting on this data. What we found is, how do I say this? Don't be scared of the data. I think the data is there to help you. I think some people get overwhelmed with all the data that's out there, and then you're not sure what to look at. But I think when it comes to engagement, look at your bounce rate, which again is what percentage of people are just bouncing right away. So you can think of it as the percentage of people who aren't really spending time on your site. So you want to get that down. Other engagement metrics are the session length. So how long people are spending on that. Another great tool that we recommend to all of our clients, and it's completely free, is a heat mapping tool. So we recommend that our clients install Clarity, which is from Microsoft. It's completely free. It works across multiple platforms, and it's great because you can see like how people are, what people are clicking on, and how far they scroll down. So having any heat map team, because what you're trying to figure out is like, are people staying on my website? How long are they staying on my website? What are they clicking on? So what draws their interest? And then how far are they scrolling? Like ideally, you want them to scroll all the way to the end. If you're lucky, if you have a really good and engaging page, you will get them to scroll all the way to the end. But a short trick to have is, if you've never done heat maps before, go install Clarity right now, and then run it for a week, and then take a look at the results, because Clarity will kind of be like, okay, here are the hotspots, and just move those hotspots up. If you see that people are clicking on the FAQ, if you see that people are clicking on reviews or the like influencer content or UGC, but that's way below the fold, just bring that stuff up, because we're seeing that if you're bringing the engaging content up, that keeps people staying.
Yeah, listeners, direct call to action from Angelo right there. I absolutely love that advice, Angelo. As far as a free tool, every business should have on their website. I love the fact that this stuff transcends e-commerce as well. It's valuable information for all of us business owners. I want to ask you about AI because, Angelo, everybody wants to talk about AI. We know that all of our listeners are talking about it. Everybody in the world is using ChatGPT these days. You must facepalm so much at some of the things you hear people say that they think AI is magic. Talk to us about some of the current limitations of AI, and then shed some light on the better side of AI, where you think that market's going.
Yeah, so the current limitations of AI, so it is getting better. It's improved a lot from when I first started using ChatGPT, probably like November 2022. So if you're expecting that AI will, you can enter your website. I think one day it will get there. It's not there now. It'd be great if like you could enter your website. Here's my website. Here's a person that I want to market to. Build me a landing page that will, or build me an experience geared to that person. The AI is just not going to do that because it doesn't have enough context. And also the image generation tools aren't there. So like for a lot of brands, I mean, for any business owners, you care a lot about the branding because you worked really hard for it. So it's not plug and play where you could just kind of like, here's a brand asset, have the AI go to town. So what we do is we have designers on staff. So there's always a human that's looking and that's checking and proofreading every text and every image to make sure that it fits brand. I think where AI has been a godsend for us is that it really helps with, think of like the menial tasks that, an example could be like combing through reviews. So we use AI. You can basically use AI to comb through 1,000 reviews and then identify what are the top 3 compliments and top 3 like complaints, right? That's an easy way because AI can just scan through the text really quickly, and then you could figure out like, okay, here are what people love about the product, and you can put that in your homepage. It's like people love that we're sustainable, that it tastes really good. This isn't the same product, but and it looks really cool. People love that. What do people dislike about it? Oh, they say it's too expensive. And then in that same page, or in like, you can basically take that what people perceive as a con of your product and incorporate it into the page and answer it. So like, it's expensive, but that's because we use sustainable products and we believe in sustainability. So we think it's worth the extra money. So I think where AI is really helpful is that it kind of like 10x's the really, really time consuming tasks. The other thing is that AI, and I've played around with it. It's also very helpful in kind of like doing data analysis. So my first job out of college was consulting. So we lived in spreadsheets. So I'm very comfortable with spreadsheets, but I know when I talk to my clients about spreadsheets and I show them a big spreadsheet, they get scared. But the AI is going to get there where you can, at least summarize the spreadsheet at a top level. So I think using AI today to, again, make the menial tasks a lot faster, so you can save your time to free up to do more strategic tasks or the things that matter more, that require more of your attention, or using AI to kind of like summarize data, or even just make any spreadsheet work a lot easier. That's where I think AI is right now.
Yeah. Listeners, the word there is complement. It complements all the things that we're doing, even to the structure of Angelo's team over at ShopLandingAI. They have human designers. It complements all the work that you all are doing. So I absolutely love that. And Angelo, listeners know that in these conversations, I always love talking to you, not only as a subject matter expert, but also entrepreneur to entrepreneur. It's so much fun to tap into your entrepreneurial mind. And obviously, you guys are up to some big things. I will say your roster of brands and companies that you're involved with, and I know it's always growing is really incredible. And I know that you navigated the Y-Combinator world. You're venture backed.
Yeah.
Talk to us about that approach to launching this business.
Yeah, so I would say where we landed today is kind of different from where we started. We launched the company 5 years ago. And when we first launched the company, we were building a very different tool. We were building a tool for game developers to help them collect all the data that the game was generating about performance. So if you're playing a game, it would collect like FPS, load time, data about performance, and then based off of that data collection, you could optimize the game so that you could perform better. So we were excited to build that tool. We built it, and then we took it to market. And then the game developers, it was a nice to have. It was not something that the really big guys cared about it, but then the really big guys had their own tools. And so the small guys, it was like on the small game developers, it was just performance was kind of like a nice to have. It wasn't something that was going to move the needle. So that was our first pivot. We've done a lot of pivots. When the pandemic hit, we decided to focus on e-commerce because we saw the boom where a lot of our friends, the people that we knew, were just getting on Shopify and they were selling. This is when dropship was huge back in 2020. And what we noticed working with those brands is that there's always been our thesis has always been, how can we use data to help make better decisions or to make it so that you have a more compelling product or improve the product or improve the customer experience. And so this is probably our third pivot once we pivoted into e-commerce, which is all to say that like you have to keep, I would have learned the hard way. I'm a perfectionist. And so I kind of like want to spend a lot of time coming up with this idea and then like waiting till it's perfect and then launching it. And then we just learned over the years that you just have to like ship it and that the market will tell you, the customers will tell you what's important and what's not. One of the things that we found when we found success with the landing page was that there was a lot of, it took some time in order to get the landing page just right and in order to start generating the results. And so we made a strategic pivot to, we're still building landing pages, but what if we can do this quiz, or what if we could do this lower touch way of getting people to interact with the page and optimize it so that we could show value sooner. So I guess my advice to entrepreneurs, especially if you're selling any sort of like SaaS product, is that we had to get ourselves out of the habit of like building technology and then taking it to market. And instead of like just talking to customers, thinking about what they want and then building the technology in parallel to make sure that there was a demand for it.
Yeah, Angelo, I love that transparency because I'm sure a lot of listeners will relate to your perfectionist tendencies. So I want to ask you then, what's that line in the sand where you guys say, let's ship it? It's good enough because obviously what you've done is incredible, but I know that your product in a year from now is not going to look like the way that it looks now, especially with the nature of AI. Obviously, AI is only getting more powerful. It's only learning more things. So how are you forcing yourself to just ship it? Because it's easier said than done sometimes.
It's easier said than done. And I think... it all goes back to my career experience because when my first job out of college, again, litigation consulting. So our clients were lawyers and the work had to be perfect because we were doing basically analysis for in litigation suits. So it's like Fortune 500, Fortune 100 companies are being sued. So the work that we had to do had to be right because if it wasn't right, there was another opposing team on the other side that was ready to ridicule our work. And so that's kind of where like the perfectionist tendencies come from. But thinking back now, like, so I'm involved in all the data analysis and I look at what the AI does and the work that comes out of the data analysis that comes out from the data that we're collecting for our customers. And for me, it's like, I feel like I could always take an analysis further and I could always make it a little bit more interesting or a little bit more complicated. But then I have to take a step back because a lot of the customers that we're working with, they don't have dedicated data analysts or a data engineer or any of these resources. They're not even looking at their Google Analytics data. Most people don't, which makes sense because you have so many things on your plate that for me, I had to stop like, hey, what is the most perfect data report or what is the perfect data analysis or what is a great insight and just present what we have because a lot of times what we have, people were finding value in what we had, even though from my own, I guess, personal standard, I was like, I could be better. But then when we showed it to our clients, they were super happy in that they gave them the insight that was able to help them make a decision faster. We've seen again where like we put together some recommendations and I'm like, oh, these could be better. I can feel like, it can be stronger or like, I want to check this, I want to check that. And then we present it. And then like within a couple of hours, they've implemented our suggestion to their website. And then and a couple of days later, you can already see that they've increased, engagement, or they've already increased conversions. So just, I guess, being okay with like, this doesn't have to be perfect, but even if it's not perfect for me, it's could be perfect for someone else.
Yeah, I love those insights. That's kind of the fun world of e-commerce, is you can show those tangible metrics and improvements. And I think that's really powerful. Speaking of which, I can't have you on here and not ask you the technical question. We always get emails from listeners about the tech side of things. You've mentioned Shopify, and obviously there are so many different platforms that people can launch e-commerce businesses on. What's the tech of getting ShopLandingAI set up? Is it only Shopify? Talk to us about that.
Yeah, so we're going to launch Shop Landing, if you just want the landing pages, we're pretty platform agnostic. Most of our customers are on Shopify, but we also work with WordPress. We work with a lot of direct to consumers, but we've also done projects for service brands and B2B. And then for this quiz feature, what we're going to be launching in a press release, we don't have the name yet, but we'll have a name by the time the press release is out, hopefully. No, we will, because the press release is going out. That is initially just going to be available for Shopify, and we will eventually have an app for the store, but we're releasing in kind of like a closed beta. We do all the work for you. All we need is access to your Shopify, and it takes 20 minutes, and then we can get your first quiz and first personalized experience up and running.
Yes, I love that overview. That will be music to the ears of many e-commerce shoppers. And Angela, I think that's a real life example of you shipping it, because you're just like, we don't have a name yet, but we're going to have a name.
We don't have a name yet. We're going to have a name. Yeah, we're deciding between 2 or 3, but the press release goes out next week, so we'll have a name by the press release.
Heck yeah, I love it. Which, listeners, for you all, that means that it's already live in the world, so you'll be able to check out Angelo's link in just a second. But Angelo, before we get there, I always love asking this question at the end of interviews, because I have no idea which direction you're going to take it in, and that is, what's your one takeaway, or the one action that you want to impart on every single listener, whether they're a entrepreneur or an entrepreneur? This is you speaking not only as a subject matter expert, but someone who is in the thick of it, building a business, developing a software, serving customers. What's that one takeaway?
I would say my one takeaway is to just look at your Google Analytics. I know that sounds so simple, but we work with a lot of customers who kind of like take it for granted. GA is already collecting all this data for you. Latest version of GA4, and you could just go, you can watch a YouTube video. Maybe I'll make a tutorial of how to analyze it, but go into your Google Analytics and just look at what the bounce rate is on your website. Look at, what what the session length is. If you want to get fancy, you could also filter that in terms of do you see different patterns in terms of your traffic? So are people coming from Google spending more time versus the traffic that's coming from Facebook or coming from TikTok or whatever traffic source? I think a lot of times when we talk about data, people get scared or they're not sure what to look at. And you kind of just have to dive in. It's one of those things where you just don't be intimidated by it. A lot of brands sit on this treasure trove of data, and it's not until someone like my team or they work with a consultant that they're able to get all that value of the data. But if you've been operating a business for more than a year, you have a ton of data already that you should be able to leverage.
Yes, Angelo, you say that it's simple, but the beauty is it's also free and it's also universal. So everybody, I love that advice from you, Angelo. With that said, I know that listeners, especially those who are in the e-commerce world, will be keen to see all the great stuff that you're rolling out, all the great ways that you're serving e-commerce brands, as well as those case studies. So much good stuff on your website. So drop those links on us. Where should listeners go from here?
Yeah, you can just check us out at ShopLanding.ai.
Listeners, you already know how easy we're making it for you. Down in the show notes, you'll find that link directly to ShopLanding.ai. Super easy to remember, but wherever it is that you're tuning in, you can check the show notes and click right on through to that link. So Angelo, on behalf of myself and all the listeners around the world, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
All right. Thank you, Brian.